Hey everyone, welcome to the That's Allowed podcast. I'm your hostess, Dr. Adrienne McKeon, and today we have Ottilana Rolandsson. Please introduce yourself, lovely.
Well, my name is Ottiliana and I live in northern Sweden where I'm from. And I lived in the US for 18 years. From like December 1995, I moved to New Orleans. And then later on, I was there for like 3 years. And then I moved to California. And find like that led me to getting my PhD in theater studies at UC Santa Barbara, where you and I met each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also lived in Brazil and Germany and so on. And then I moved back to Sweden 2014, and I have been here since in my hometown in northern Sweden. And currently I am starting a business that will be called Ottiliana.
All right.
and or Ottiliana Ventures. And it is a performance art-based company that has different legs, but at the core, it's about storytelling and our authentic voice, these things that you
Yes.
love too, but
So,
also arts and so on.
so I actually had this vision the other day that I
Ah,
wanted to share with you, and I wanted to
yeah.
wait until we were actually on air to share this with you.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I had this vision that you and I were going to start a venture together, and that it's about helping people to tap into their kind of, sacred wisdom and like open up to their creativity and start to, create performance art pieces.
I love it.
Yeah. Because
I
I've
love
sort of
it.
had this epiphany that, I'm a creation coach and this is what I'm here to do,
Mhm.
to help people take their wild imaginings and make them into realities.
Right.
And so, but then it was like you were very strongly in that picture with me, and we were doing
Uh-huh.
this thing together. So I'm very excited to see where that goes.
Uh,
Some sort of
I
manifestation
well,
magic happening there.
yes, yes, I love it. I
Yes.
welcome it. Yes, yes, yes.
Excellent. So
Yeah.
I'll just ask the question, which
Mhm.
is, what story is the world not getting?
You have asked me this before, and I've been thinking about it, and and then the a few weeks ago it dawned on me, and that was about diversity.
Hmm.
And the backstory is that I had been the moderator and also the host for Umeå Pride. Umeå is my hometown where I live
Mhm.
now, and Pride, the Pride Festival.
Mhm.
And it was done now in October. And of course, most of it was digital because of the Corona pandemic. And and I was the host, and then I was invited also to be the moderator for a panel discussion about, it was, the translation would be like trans nuances, and it was about the
Okay.
trans community and being
Right.
transgender. I am not, but about all that complexity. And I was asked to do it because they needed someone that was curious and open and genuine, but who didn't have much experience in the whole transgender issues. And so I was like, oh, I will be very happy to do this. And
Why do you think they chose to go that route instead of having someone who's very familiar with the trans community?
because it was a panel, I think it was because as there was a panel and it was three people who have profound knowledge and experience in
Yeah.
the trans community from
Mhm.
three different perspectives, and
Mhm.
that they especially for the star in on the panel, this trans woman who is a famous actress and journalist and writer here in Sweden,
Mhm.
it was her demand. And I think it is because she wanted to find a way away from the conflict
Yeah.
within the trans community to a more open space.
Mhm.
And if this person, the host, would be more neutral,
Yeah.
perhaps this person could listen more keenly to each person and bring these perspectives together, and not have them oppose each other in some kind of drama.
Yeah. And I think it helps the audience too to have a representative kind of up there
Yes.
of like, okay, this person's learning
Yeah.
just along with us. Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And it became very successful, and it was a wonderful journey. And also, this person, she had said afterwards in media that she felt that I had helped them break new grounds within the conversations and dialogues within the trans community, and which I was very happy that she felt thus. But for me too, what I learned when I was doing a lot of research, and I kept coming back to, what's the big deal? I mean, I understand for a transgender person to go through all of that, or you're very young and you don't really know your identity, things like that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But from the society, what's the big deal? I
Right.
kept coming back to that. Why would someone, if I'm not transgender, why would I have an issue with a transgender person?
Right.
Why would they pose a threat to my identity and my survival? They don't at all. And I was like, it has to do, perhaps it has something to do with that we as humans, we speak so well about, oh, we need to be diverse. You know, everyone needs to like fit around the table, you know, and so on. But that perhaps we often get locked down in binary thoughts within ourselves,
Yeah.
and that we truly need to exercise our own inner diversity, our own inner
Mm.
ecosystem, the ecosystem of our minds, our emotions, our soul. But of course, it's challenging because it's like, oh my God, it's so complex. It's much easier. Yes, no, right, wrong, black and white, period.
Yep.
Right? It's much easier. While the complexity is hard. But at the same time, we also know deep within and on the surface that diversity gives richness, brings richness. And it's also how nature and fauna thrives, how the forest, the oceans thrives,
Mm-hmm.
and also how humanity thrive. So then I was like, okay, so maybe the story that the world is not getting so clearly is that perhaps each one of us would do humanity and the world a huge favor if we would practice diversity within ourselves and be strengthened, you know, like maybe that is like a muscle to exercise at the same time, in the same way as intellectual endeavor, like you and I got our PhDs. Well, that was a huge challenge that required a lots of diversity in the head, in the
Yeah.
mind,
Yeah.
in thought,
Mm-hmm.
and agility and flexibility and turning and twisting one question from many different perspectives, uh, and putting together many different complex thoughts into a whole, right? But we also know it was tremendously satisfying, and it has changed us forever.
Yeah.
So I wish for myself that I will continue the diversity practice so that so that I have the fortitude to have complexity wash through me without me being afraid or resisting it or saying no to it. And instead leaning into it with a curious openness and interest.
Yeah. I've definitely noticed that when people talk about diversity, most of the time they're just thinking about one kind of diversity, which is racial diversity or cultural diversity. They're not thinking about gender diversity. They're not
Mm.
thinking about sexual diversity. And they're definitely not thinking about neurodiversity or emotional diversity or
Mm.
the diversity you're talking about, which is within us. We have all these different personas. We have all these
Yeah.
different personalities, these different stories, these different ideas about ourselves, ideas that other people have given us about ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have this multiverse that lives within us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, to try to simplify that and pin yourself down to one story is what we do as a society. Like I've been thinking lately about, my title. I finally came up with the title creation coach, which took me years, to come to because it is really hard and frankly inadvisable to stamp one
Mm.
label on yourself and say, this is what I am.
Yeah.
This is what I do.
Yeah.
But that's what is asked of us as
Right.
humans.
Which
That, we go
also,
on LinkedIn or whatever, and we have to have a title,
right.
right?
Yeah. And then when we lose whatever we stamped on our forehead, we lose that, we lose our identity, and we come into
Right.
crisis like, oh my God, who am I?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking two things. One was, I haven't done it. I'm going to do it now when it's next new moon. The meditation that you had spoken of, with letting go of everything that we believe that we need to
Yeah.
survive, right?
The
And
trash
then
man meditation. Yeah.
the trash man meditation, and then finding oneself completely like empty. And it's like maybe a scary process, I don't know, I could imagine, but then coming to this like some sort of like matrix perhaps,
Yeah. So
which is
after that, which I
mm,
completely recommend, the Trash
yeah.
Man Meditation by Daniel Bruce Levin, brilliant, super useful. When you're done with that, go to my website and download the free guided meditation that I just put on there, which will then
Excellent.
help you fill yourself back up with all
Perfect.
the things that are really meaningful to you right now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. I will do that. I'm doing these moon phases rituals in my life now, actually
Yeah.
very much inspired by Amy Ray that you interviewed.
Yeah.
I had already started that process before, and then she spoke about her uh, daily rituals, and also about and I'd written to her, and as I know her, also from UCSB,
Yeah.
and I had asked her about, I'm so curious about your daily rituals, uh, as a way to frame our days and nights and
Yes.
weeks and months and years in a way, so perhaps like to get a framework so that we also can live within the creative flow and the good chaos and the complexity of life. But we need framework perhaps that can help, that can be the binary points somehow
Yeah.
for more fluid life to be available to us. Anyway, and then she spoke about her, that she's doing new moon rituals, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm just moving into that. So I'm so inspired. So I'm going to add the trash man and this other filling yourself up to my moon rituals this month.
Beautiful. I call it the
Yes.
ideal scene
Yay.
meditation. Yeah.
Excellent. I look forward to that. I was thinking another thing, this that you said with the labels, and that we are trained by society, that you need to, like the 3-minute pitch, the
Oh,
elevator
yeah. The
pitch,
elevator
and
pitch.
yeah, and the business cards, they are not maybe as common today as they were like 5-10 years ago, but
Yeah.
nevertheless. And not to take away from that, of course, that can be very useful, and it's good to have a telephone number, an email address,
Sure.
a name,
Hmm.
um, but also at the same time, I remember when I just moved to New Orleans, and I was so creative. I was doing performance art, I was studying visual arts, I was painting, I was doing all these things. And many people have always said, oh, you're like a Renaissance person, right? And then I meet this famous American composer for movies, Hollywood composer, huge. And I mean, it was great to get to know him, and he wanted to give me advice because he did see a lot of potential in this young, creative, brilliant young woman.
Hmm.
But she's like all over the place. I mean, this won't do. She will never become successful if she's just like doing all these things. She need to pick one thing and one style, because that's what he
Right.
had done and gained enormous success. And he heartfelt, and he really wants to transmit this knowledge to me and this
Yeah.
understanding. And he says exactly, you need to pick one thing, one style, and then you do only that. And I was like, what? I'm like, okay, I'm going to consider it. I respect you, I will consider it. And I just came out from that thought process, and I said, with my personality and who I am, I will never be able to do that. And I have tried, believe me, I have tried from time to time, because I've gotten the advice from other people that have had
Hmm.
success in the same way. And sure, some people, this is the only thing I want to do, and only this and nothing else, you know, good for them. But I am not that. And I finally come to accept that with myself, and that that is fine and dandy and well.
Yeah.
And perhaps then that leads into these insights that I have had lately about the importance of the inner diversity and
Yeah.
the feeding the inner ecosystem.
Yeah, and that openness and creativity and just letting things flow through you as they flow through you. You know, it
Mm,
is solid business advice, yes, to
mm,
niche down and
mhm,
pick something that is consistent so that people can
mm,
consistently find you.
mhm.
But I also find that it's soul crushing.
Yeah,
I've had the same
yeah,
issue and I just had that recent epiphany too where I was like, no, I'm a creation coach. I'm not
yeah.
specifically a book midwife. That is
Mhm.
one thing that I do, but that's not
Right.
the only thing that I do. I help entrepreneurs figure out what their business is. And I help, people who just have a career and want to figure out what they, how to find joy within what they're already doing and find the creativity in what they're already doing. And performers and all, it's like I just help people tap into their own creation energy and create what they're here to create and give their gifts, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm just tired of pretending like I only do one thing because that's just not me,
Mm.
you know?
And it's not true.
And it's not true.
Yeah,
I do all of
yeah.
these things. And that is my gift. Is just helping people figure out what their gift is and give it.
Yeah.
And I think for a long time I shied away from that because I hate the word life coach. I hate
Mhm.
it. The idea that someone, needs someone to tell them how to live their life just seems insulting to me. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, I
I'm not here
hear
to tell you how
you.
to live your life. It's
I
ridiculous.
don't know how you're going to,
Yeah.
how do I know?
Like I haven't figured out life yet. Have you?
Yeah. No, thank
No.
God, no.
No, but what I have figured
Yeah.
out is how
Mm.
to tap into your creation energy.
Yeah,
And everybody can tap into that. Everyone has
yeah.
access to it. And just
Mm.
like you're saying, it's so diverse because we are connected to everything.
Yeah,
Everyone and
yeah.
everything. We can have that empathy, we can have that connection.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to open up that channel and be open
Mm-hmm.
to it, you
Yeah,
know?
I love it. I love
So
it.
tell us a little bit more about your story as an artist. When did you realize that you had this creative energy within you? When did you start creating and how did that change over the years and change you and change the people around you?
Well, that was a big question,
Yes.
but let I will take one little strand and then we see how it unfolds.
Yes.
But it's a wonderful question. Well, already as a child, I like to tell this story. Already as a small child, I wrote my first, well, not a small child, but like when I was like 6, 7 years old, I
Mhm.
wrote my first poem.
Mm.
And it was sort of like maybe perhaps it could be compared to a haiku, although I had no background in, like, I mean, a little bit in school, whatever they did in kindergarten or like in the first grades, or like doodling on papers and some pedagogy, like school stuff. But and my family, they were not, my mom, she loved crafts a lot. Her and her closest sister, they were very crafty, but not really any artists around me that I knew or were in contact with or anything like that. But already as I was said 5, 6 years old, I wrote this poem, and it went like this. I'm translating from Swedish, and it went like this: when the heavens falls down, we will all become like a bunch of camels.
And what did that mean to you?
I don't know. It just made perfect sense to me. Like, who knows what could happen with this universe? I don't know. And I was kind of like a deep, strange child, and I knew that I had been the friend and lover of Genghis Khan. I remember how I was galloping with him over the tundra in Mongolia, and we were like riding, and we were like laughing like wildly, like looking at each other and just laughing. And I knew that I had been like this wise woman that picked herbs in the forest, and I had been a shaman. I knew all of these things, you know.
Mhm.
But in my family and in my culture, you didn't speak about these things,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
In Sweden, you don't speak. I mean, subcultures do speak about spirituality, and more so now. But in Sweden, you don't speak about God. You know, you speak to God within yourself, but you don't
Right. Quietly.
speak. Yeah, you speak quiet. It's like it's an intimate relationship, you know, that you don't share with others so freely, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've grown up in all of that, and no one spoke about past lives or anything like that. But I just knew these things, you know, and I engaged with them, and you know, like my mom and dad, they were like, okay, this is our strange kid, you know, but you know,
Sure.
she does no harm, you know.
Right. Kids are
She's
weird.
normal.
Whatever.
Kids are weird, you know, whatever, exactly. And then uh, when I was then a teenager, all of a sudden, so I continued to write, you know, and for many years poems, and then this led me to performance art. But in between there, as a teenager, all of a sudden I'm like to my mom and dad, they are, what do you want for your birthday? And I think I was 16. I'm like, the only thing I want is painting supplies, a canvas and painting supplies. And they're like, well, you don't paint. And I'm like, I am now. I wasn't exactly then, but within myself I was,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So they were sweet and they got me that, and then I started to paint. And uh, and then and also when I was like 17 at college, community college sort of thing. It's like a term different in the US and in Sweden, but you know, whatever school you go to when you're like 17. I met this Hungarian theater man that had fled communism in Hungary, and he ended up in northern Sweden. Northern Sweden, now it's really cool, and you have been to Umeå. It's a wonderful, it's a very cultural and innovative town, and lots of international companies, and it has a research university and all kinds of stuff. But then it was like super boring. This is like in the early 80s, late 80s, early 90s. And he just like entered the stage of Umeå, like in the streets, you know, and the downtown. And he was so flamboyant, and he had his dark hair and his beautiful mustache and purple shirts. No one wore purple shirts, like of a woman, yes, but a man, oh no, no,
Mhm.
no, 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 no. This was like hardcore guys, you know, that worked in the forest and did real manly stuff, you know, and
Yeah.
manly stuff was not to wear a purple shirt. And then he had this beautiful shiny black dress pants, and then he had high leather boots where he tucked his pants into them, and they sort of like poofed out a little bit,
Uh-huh.
you know, the edge, you know. And he then starts to work with theater in my hometown. And I found him, and I started to do theater with him, and he touched on lots of young people's life. And we just adored each other. And at one point he said, but I'm very shy. And I had then, you know, gone through, and I had been sexually abused when I was young. And I had,
Yeah.
from being a very open child, I had just locked down and become very shy and afraid of the world, and, you know,
Yeah.
introverted. I am a very extroverted person, as you can hear, but I had become sort of like introverted to
Yeah.
protect myself,
Mhm.
I assume. And so I was very like curious about all the theater stuff that he did, but I kept on, you know, like in the background, you know. I didn't want to make a fuss around myself or draw attention, you know. But he saw something in me, and then he said, Ottiliana, why don't you come with me? I'm going to the countryside, and I'm going to go and teach directing. And so I will be, you know, like doing this for a few weeks, you know, and
Yeah.
not staying overnight, but we would go out and do this and come back. And would you like to come with me? And I'm like, well, I love to travel. You know, I can just go to the airport and just sit there like, oh my God, it's so exciting. And then go back home, you
Yeah.
know. And I just love everything with traveling. So I was like, oh yes, absolutely. I would love to go on a travel with you, but I don't want to do any theater. And he's like, okay, it's fine. You know, he didn't, you know, give that any energy whatsoever. he must have had a plan. So anyway, so we show up and we're in this old school building, and it's all these grown-up people there that are like interested in theater, and they're doing this directing class with this foreigner, you know, that is so flamboyant, and he was wonderful with theater, and he was quite famous back in Hungary. I later learned from other people when I was traveling. And they knew his name, Andras Fodor. And so anyways, I'm sitting there on a bench just watching them, and I'm like, oh, this is so exciting. But I have no need of being a participant at all. I just want to observe. And then all of a sudden, they all turned to me and they said, Andras says, we need an actor. They are one short. So in order for them to do this directing thing that they are doing, we really would need you. And I'm like, I really don't want to do this. I was thought to myself, I'm like, no, please. Oh, this is so embarrassing. I was like, it was so painful. But then I didn't want to be rude, and they needed someone. And he could just see I was in torment and torn. And he said, you don't have to do anything. Just come up and stand here. You know, no big deal. And I'm like, well, I can stand on one spot, you know. And so I went up there, and then I don't remember anything. I like completely blacked out, and then I come back. I don't know how long it went, but it must have been like half an hour or 45 minutes, I learned later. And they're all like standing around me, and they're just like in awe. And I have no idea what happened. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, thank you so much. That was just amazing. And I'm like, okay. And that poor girl that I was, a teenager, you know, so insecure. And they're like, are you from the Royal Theatre in Stockholm? Like our big, big, badass theater, the most famous theater of Sweden, you know? And I'm like, no. I did maybe a play in school when I was like 13, you know? And so there was something that triggered. And so, like something that opened up that he must have seen. And he then later helped me to say, then started to do theater with him. And I just found it wonderful. And then he then helped me to audition at the finest theater school that we have in Sweden that I wasn't ready for yet. So I flunked, you know, I didn't even get a call back. Maybe I had one call back. I did 2 monologues, but they are like, okay, she is obviously not ready ready for us. Yeah. But then we have a famous private theater school that I also applied to, and I got in. And then since then, and then later on when I came to New Orleans, I was studying painting, but I then started to do theater as well. They had a art program and a theater arts program. So I started to do both. But then I was also doing these performance art pieces, and I performed at the House of Blues and at museums, and I got all these different gigs, and it was just like wonderful. So somehow it just organically broke open.
Yeah.
And so then I continued to do things like that. And then when I came to California, I went into drama and got my bachelor, my master, and then my PhD in theater studies. And then now when I returned back to my hometown, I have a one-woman show about Greta Garbo that I've done, and I did it several times in California over like a course of maybe 5-7 years. And then I also did it premiered also in Sweden. But then since then, I have had a hard time finding a way into the theater community in Sweden and in my hometown. It seems like they are very protective of themselves. And I have not known how to do it, while at the same time I had gotten then other really cool job positions. I was the director of the museum, a famous guitar museum that we have in my town and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it took me sort of on another course, which has been wonderful. And then earlier this year, I discovered oral storytelling.
Yeah.
And it's somehow just so divinely inspired, because then on both my mom and dad's sides, we have these quite established storytellers. My great-grandfather, he was like a shaman kind of person, although this, you know, he was a Christian too, and this was like, oh, the devil. So he only did it when people really, they wouldn't survive if he didn't do what
Right.
his talent was. But then he also was this great storyteller. So somehow, and we have this particular style of storytelling also in the region where I live, which I now is tapping into. So
Yeah.
somehow it's getting into like not a full circle, but more like the spiral, the
Yeah.
spiraling. It's, tying back to deep roots that I
Yeah.
have.
So let's tap into that. Let's
Mhm.
go. Go into our exercise now because it's about that time. So,
Mhm.
can I have you close your eyes?
Mhm.
Okay, beautiful. So, I'm going to wave my magic wand, and now you are doing exactly what you were meant to do. You are giving your gifts to the world freely, and they are receiving them with such gratitude. You are just full of purpose and meaning. And so I want you to look around your life as it is in this sort of ideal space where you are giving the world exactly what you came to give it. And tell me what you see, what you hear, what you can smell, taste, and touch in this space.
At this very moment, I thought I would see something else, but at this very moment, I am standing on this big stage,
Mm-hmm.
and it actually looks like the Royal Theatre in Stockholm.
Okay.
And I'm standing on the big stage. They have several theaters there, but I'm standing on the main stage, and the house is full, and oh, I see all these lights and the people. It's a stand. Oh my God. Oh, I'm starting to cry now. Oh, I'm so moved. And it's this standing ovation. I'm alone on stage and the whole house is giving me a standing ovation. And on this stage, it's not a lots of set pieces. It's something that is very minimalistic.
Mm-hmm.
It's like simple lighting too. So I don't know if it is if it's or like a more a storytelling event more than a theater piece.
So let's say that you did just share a personal story,
Mm-hmm.
an authentic personal story of yours, and you're getting this overwhelming acceptance and validation and love back from that, from this audience. I just want you to revel in that feeling for a moment. That you were just completely vulnerable and open with this audience. And they've received that gift, embraced it, and are offering back their appreciation. What does that feel like?
It feels like my whole entire being. I'm completely open. It's like my whole being is completely open, and my being is huge, and but it's very raw and vulnerable,
Hmm.
and like I'm holding nothing back, and I'm giving everything freely.
Yeah.
And it's like and I can feel that everything that is like my whole being is like flooding. It's like flowing out into the audience, and I can feel each one of them somehow. But then I also can feel from the back, from above and back, that
Mm.
is coming like this stream of energy that is outside me from others. I don't know if it's from other dimension or back in history or but it's sort of like other beings that are just flooding
Mm.
me with their stories and energies, and it's coming in at the back of my head, at the nape of my head, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it's called, and then it's just like streaming into my nervous system and my spine, and then it's just transformed and it's just flooding straight out through my open heart and arms, and I'm touching each one of them in the audience and somehow beyond them too.
Yeah.
It's like this matrix. I'm sort of like this beacon, this transmitter uh, of this matrix somehow.
I want you to see out in the audience, there's a young girl. She's about the age that you were when you were so terrified to go up on stage. And she's just got tears streaming down her face. She's looking up at you, and she's just broken open and opened herself to a new possibility.
Oh, I love her so much.
I want you to find her afterwards.
Mm.
Find her in the crowd afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Go up to her. What do you want to say to her?
First, I want to ask her. First, I want to tell her that I saw you in the crowd there in the audience, inside the theater. I saw you clearly. And my impression was that you were deeply moved.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? And she says that is correct. And then I ask her, would you allow me to hug you?
Mm-hmm.
And she says yes, and she starts to cry. And we're just holding each other, both crying, as we had known each other for the longest time. But it's like it's the first time we meet, but it's like we've always known each other. And then she also tells me that I said, so why? I'm asking her, I'm curious why she was so moved. And she says that seeing what you did and gave on stage, I now oh, it's so beautiful. I now know that I am to dedicate my life and my energy to the power of stories and the power of storytelling as a bridge between people, as a bridge between cultures, as a bridge of understanding, as a bridge of tolerance, as a bridge to open up to deep wisdom. And I see that she speaks truth, and I can see that will be so for her. And I say thus to her, that will be so.
How does that feel?
Oh, it's so beautiful. I'm so profoundly moved. I'm so profoundly moved, and I'm so happy and grateful. I feel very grateful.
Oh, I think we'll end right there before we lose all our mascara. Oh my goodness. Thank you for that so
Thank
much.
you.
I was that little girl and I was you, and it's amazing.
Oh, thank you, Adrian.
We have to do this.
Oh, yes.
We have to do this. We have to make this happen. This is
wow. I did not expect this.
Me either. The beauty of this process. It's like you just never know what's going to break open. And people always think they're going to see something different. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but the people who really allow themselves to open up to the process often see something completely unexpected.
Yeah, because I started to decide what I was going to see.
Right, of course.
Now I'm going to be a good girl. This is going to, Adrian is going to like this. The listeners, they would be like, oh, good.
Yes, good, yes.
Bravo.
But that's the thing, when you allow yourself to really open up to what your heart actually desires, it's just
yeah. And that process, I'm thinking that too, like because what is that is also connecting to intuition. And what is intuition?
Yeah.
Perhaps that's the language of our soul.
Yeah. Yeah.
And oh, I want for myself, I want for you, I want for everyone. But if I speak for myself from
Mm.
this, I really want for my heart, for the intuition to completely open up, and for myself to respect that voice in myself and really enjoy listening to it.
Yeah.
That perhaps that could be the voice that I lead with instead of the monkey voice,
Yep.
the
Yeah.
chatter,
The chatter. Yeah. And to be that example,
Mm,
to share from that place,
mm,
from your heart, from your solar plexus, from
mm,
all your chakras, just
mhm.
to be
Yeah,
able to open all of that and share on all of those levels. When other people see that and experience that, it shows them that there's this other possibility beyond that
yeah,
monkey voice,
right. Hmm.
beyond the ego that's telling them, be a good girl.
Yeah,
You are
yeah,
this. Act like that.
yeah.
Instead, we can be a delightful, contradictory mess.
Yeah. Oh, this is so beautiful. This
Thank
is
you
so
so much.
beautiful. Thank you, Adrian. I love you so
I
much.
love you so much.
Yeah,
This
and
was
you're so,
perfect. And you know
yeah.
how much I needed this just to catch people up to the conversation we had before we pushed record today. There's some very it's October, okay? We're getting toward Samhain or Halloween or whatever you want to
Yeah,
call it. Dia de los Muertos,
yeah,
All Saints. And the veil is thin and some very
mm,
weird stuff is happening right now.
yeah.
This morning my stovetop was shattered by I don't know what sort of entity. There was a small pan on the stove. David turned around for a moment and then he heard a smash and he turned back and the pan was like this and just embedded in the shattered stovetop.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. So
So
so I
why?
really needed this
Yeah.
to just get back into the light and out of that
Uh-huh.
shadow and
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll sort it out, but it's really lovely to be taken back into that space of possibility
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
hope. So thank you
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, we will sign off for now.
Yep.
I love you.
I love you.